Hello, beautiful community. Let's talk about the Belarusian dictator Lukashenko trolling Putin, as he has been doing a lot recently. Now, before we get to what Lukashenko has been saying, I want to emphasize that this is not going to be a serious conversation about the importance of Belarus in connection with the brutal imperialistic war we're witnessing. And I said something in my chat yesterday that triggered a small number of people. And that was about how Lukashenko's opponents are at home in Belarus and abroad are Ukraine's natural allies, and that thinking in that direction is a very important part of a strategy that takes seriously not just kicking the damn invasion of Ukraine's territory, but restabilizing the ex-Soviet space, not just Ukraine, into something that transcends the imperial authoritarian model, and Belarus could be pivotal here, and only something like that in the end really guarantees security, including of course security for Ukraine. Now, the reason small number of people got triggered is because many of you think algorithmically. You think, well, what are the 17 combinations of words that I'm gonna encounter that are gonna indicate that somebody is in the green tick box for me or in the red cross box for me? And you look at surfaces, you algorithmically look at combinations of words, and when you find 3 or 4 that are the wrong ones, you go that way, it's in the red box, and when you find the right ones, you go this way, but there's no exploration of the meaning of the words underneath. And when I say you, I mean we, right? This is a disease we all suffer from. We'll talk about that more. But now, Lukashenko's trolling. So Lukashenko is a very natural authoritarian populist, the way Putin isn't. Putin is a strong communicator in the sense that he's a strong speaker, he's a strong speech maker, and he's a strong one-on-one interlocutor, but he's not at all a creative or playful manipulator of the informational environment the way Trump is, or the way Lukashenko is. Sorry to compare a politician in a democratic country with a tyrant, but there are overlapping characteristics stylistically. And Lukashenko is not just such a good manipulator of the informational environment that he's only a little behind Trump at how good he is at that. He's also, unlike Trump, who is pathetic in practice, who is pathetic behind closed doors, which may be a good thing. Lukashenko is able to continue his manipulative endeavors effectively beyond just speech. He's also effectively manipulative in action. So he is a much more sort of obviously sick figure with allegedly narcissistic personality disorder, but he's enormously gifted, right? He's a kind of a toxic political genius. Now, and of course, he needs to demonstrate different things. One of them is that he is not just in the pocket of the Kremlin. This is Belarusian state media interview, and I have translated for you a few highlights of what Lukashenko said. So the first question coming his way was, and this is from a sort of a pro-Kremlin woman who was in Ukraine when the invasion began. She was a Ukrainian citizen. And I think, God knows where she is now, maybe in Belarus. I don't know. a lot of people think Putin is crazy, and that what is happening is all about Putin's imperialistic tendencies. What do you think about that, Mr. Lukashenko? And he answers, and this woman's name is Diana Panchenko. Diana, I can tell you, this is my word-to-word translation of Lukashenko, I can tell you 100% that Putin hasn't gone crazy. That there are imperial tendencies, penchants there, is something I haven't directly seen, but I myself think that rulers of big states always have to puff out their chests. And then Lukashenko continues. And Putin is a very careful person. He wouldn't do anything rashly. And he'd take a step, and then for a long, long time, he'll toil and suffer and look if it is worth taking the second step. So the idea that he could undertake 10 steps and skip 9 of them, and that's how the attack on Ukraine developed, is nonsense. And here is the most juicy bit I wanted to share with you. Lukashenko, a few days, or a day, I no longer remember, before the invasion, he and I met at his countryside residence and discussed the situation that was developing. And he said to me verbatim, and I'm telling you this for the first time, he told me, listen, Sasha, you know, we're in a situation, and if God forbid anything happens, and of course Lukashenko now is adding, of course we're allies, as Putin is saying this, and everyone knows about our agreements that if somebody attacks Russia, we enter the war, and if somebody attacks Ukraine, Belarus, Russia enters the war. We have an integrated army that we have created here. And it goes back to quoting Putin. If all of a sudden something happens, and I again interject, listen there, what are you talking about? What can happen? And he says, you know, anything can happen, so you cover my back, please. So Putin said, listen, Sasha, you know, we're in a situation, if God forbid anything happens, if all of a sudden something happens, you know, and anything can happen, so you cover my back, please. So Lukashenko here is talking about relaying or lying about Putin's sort of pre-war nervousness, and that account of Putin's sort of decision-making, it rings true anyway. And so he is calling Putin an imperialist, and he is talking about how nervous Putin was and uncertain Putin was before the war. And that matches not just our ideas about Putin's sort of special tentativeness in decision-making that Mark Galeotti often talks about, but also the way Putin was trying to distribute responsibility and smear guilt for the invasion on everybody. And of course you saw that in that fantastic meeting of the Security Council where Mr. Narishkin was shaking and Mr. Putin was telling him, please, you know, get out of yourself, whatever you're trying to say. I am actually going to leave this a little under-analyzed in your hands, because we will have a proper conversation about Belarus soon. But I just wanted to share a little bit of this with you. It's very palpable how much Lukashenko trolls Putin. And also, just a final remark, what's interesting is how that trolling has a kind of a post-modern quality. The way Lukashenko talks about Putin is almost the way Putin talks about the past, or the way Putin talks about ex-Russian leaders, where he'll say, well, they went right, but also they went left, but they went right, but they went left too. And so Putin inserts, this sort of postmodern porridge into these sort of empty boxes that the legacy of Stalin, for example, the legacy of Lenin represent. And that's how Lukashenko is talking about Putin. He is measuring the porridge, so he doesn't want to go too far, but is mixing into the porridge lots of jokes and insults at Putin's expense. And of course, we saw all of this too during the marvelous Lukashenko commentary on the Prigozhin mutiny. Çok sunlatılır.